Good evening, you're watching World News Tonight on TVP World. I'm Aaron Darman. They are tormenting our people. This from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy as he calls for greater protection of Ukrainians trapped in what he says are Russia's human safaris. We'll have live coverage from our correspondent in Kyiv tonight after a deadly 24 hours of Moscow's attacks. But first, the latest headlines. Russia suspends 2% of its global oil output. Drill, baby, drill. Poland expands the country's largest copper mine. And a sweet surprise for archaeologists in Warsaw. At least 9 people are dead and many more injured following 2 consecutive nights of Russian strikes on Ukrainian territory. Let's go straight to Kyiv now, where our correspondent Oz Kadagi is standing by. Good evening, Oz. What more can you tell us about these attacks?
Yeah, another consecutive day of strikes by Russia. 2 people dead on Saturday, 1 person killed in Kherson, another in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. Russia launching 3 ballistic missiles onto Ukrainian territory and 135 drones of various kinds. This follows on from those attacks on Kyiv, the capital, on Friday, which killed 7 people and injured 36 others. So the total from the last 24-hour period of attacks is 9 dead and 53 people injured. So again, another difficult period for the Ukrainians, who are still dealing with these attacks on power. So Ukrainian rescue workers are working round the clock to bring people out of rubble in situations where there's not enough power, and you've also got the electricity crews working around the clock to try and bring Ukraine's energy grid online. As it is starting to get colder, it is starting to reach that point of the year where it's starting to get quite cold, particularly in the evenings. So another difficult period for the Ukrainians under this kind of sustained bombardment. President Zelenskyy has been having meetings today with his officials, military officials, talking about the situation on the front. Ukraine is still engaged in heavy fighting in the Donetsk region, but also in the Zaporizhia region, where Russia has also been pushing from the south. So heading into the middle of November in quite a difficult period for Ukraine. That's why Zelensky's been making those calls for further support from his international partners, particularly as we head into December and those winter months. Back to you, Aaron.
Oz Kadagi in Kyiv, thank you. Staying with Ukraine now, and Volodymyr Zelenskyy says civilians need more protection from so-called human safaris near the front line, which are effectively manhunts carried out by Kremlin drones. It comes as reports emerge of Moscow increasingly targeting railway lines, with damages totalling $1 billion since the start of the year. Defence correspondent Zuzana Jurek reports.
Scenes bring into mind the pits of hell following Russian strikes on central eastern Ukraine. A 65-year-old man was killed as a result of the shelling and multiple others were injured. Russian drone strikes targeted major municipal areas in the Dnipropetrovsk region, including Dnipro and the Nikopol and Sinelnikivsky districts. Repeated intentional strikes on civilians are no coincidence. Under the pretense of training its drone operators, the Kremlin continues to perpetuate these so-called human safaris.
They started this practice in Kherson, and now they are continuing to do that, for example, in Donbas. In my opinion, Russia is trying to scare people, to push them to leave their homes and the area where they spend their whole life. They are targeting just regular civilians trying to escape by foot, for example, by the paths from the frontline cities with the dog. They are killing old men, they are killing women, they are killing children by those drones.
In response, Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy announced his government, supported by Western allies, is bolstering the efforts to support the operations of the special forces defending the targeted areas.
We are providing full direct funding to the teams to cover their needs for drones and the purchase of components. We are also working with partners to fill the PURL program, a program that allows us to purchase American weapons, in particular air defense systems and missiles for them. This week, the Northern European countries, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway and our Baltic friends have decided to contribute another $500 million to the PURL program, which will help us significantly. We are also preparing to supply other powerful air defense systems and strengthen our aviation. We are preparing a strong agreement with France, and I am confident that we will finalize this historic agreement in the near future.
However, experts note that while Kyiv adapts, so does its adversary.
It's still a great issue for Ukraine to overcome. Unfortunately, Russia's capabilities, their drone capabilities, their training of the drone operators has improved quite significantly over the last 2 years. There's not that much you can do to fight against this other than, of course, the continued air defense and interceptor drones and other moves that we've seen the Ukrainian military taking.
Air defenses are not just imperative for shielding the Ukrainian population, but also for protecting the critical infrastructure which allows the country to continue its defensive efforts.
This is a war of attrition, and this is how you attrit Ukraine's resources. You go after the transportation networks and nodes. This is a way to, again, just extinguish the Ukrainian people, make it uninhabitable in Ukraine, destroying the economy, unable to then bring supplies to the front or areas of the front because destroying these transportation networks. And so Russia's gotten better, again, with their tactics, unfortunately. And so they're getting more successful in attriting Ukraine's resources, and most notably in the last few months, the train network.
And as winter draws nearer and Ukraine suffers from record-long blackouts after the Kremlin's systematic attacks on its energy infrastructure, additional air defenses might just do the trick to keep the lights on. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
Russia is suspending about 2% of its global oil output, equivalent to $2.5 billion a year, after Ukrainian drones hit a key depot in the country's south. At the same time, Washington is clearing the way for international buyers to snap up the foreign assets of Moscow's Lukoil. Kazimierz Swisek explains.
This is the moment the Russian oil depot in Novorossiysk was struck by Ukrainian drones on Friday. This blast will be felt not only by the city's residents, but also by Russia's wallet.
Definitely meant something in terms of the oil price, because it increased about $2 per barrel when thinking about the Brent benchmark. But then again, the Ukrainian strikes as a whole are definitely squeezing Russian margins, because if you think about it, the cost of production is definitely increasing when you have to constantly repair your refineries.
This facility is responsible for roughly 2% of the country's global oil exports, close to $2.5 billion a year. While the oil will be rerouted, the attack will surely leave a mark.
If you sign a contract for delivery in December, you never know whether you're actually going to fulfill it and face fines. So on a macro level, the Russian oil revenue decreased 30% year on year in October. That's not insignificant.
And that's before US sanctions on two largest Russian oil companies, Lukoil and Rosneft, have taken effect. These will go into force on November 21st. Following their announcement, some countries like Bulgaria have asked the Donald Trump administration for permission to purchase Russian oil assets to keep their operations running. And while initially the answer was no, Washington has since changed its mind.
The main goal is for the refinery to operate, for the Bulgarian market not to experience any difficulties, for the refinery workers to be confident about their workplace and about the fact that this asset, which is part of our critical infrastructure, will operate unhindered.
The sanctions are Donald Trump's response to Vladimir Putin's refusal to end the fighting in Ukraine. Russia is earning some $200 billion annually from its energy sales, a literal and economic fuel for its war in Ukraine. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Poland will reopen 2 border crossings with Belarus next week, even as officials warn that the decision could be reversed if the security situation along the line of contact deteriorates. In Bobrovniki, passenger cars, buses and trucks from EU countries and Switzerland will be allowed to pass, while at Kuznitsa, buses are set to be excluded. The news was reportedly well received in Minsk, with officials immediately urging Poland and Belarus's shared neighbour Lithuania to follow suit, a move that looks unlikely after Belarusian balloons repeatedly disrupted air traffic over recent weeks. Boom time for one of the largest copper mines in the world, based in Poland's southwest. The expansion of the Rudna quarry is being heralded as a key strategic project for the country's future, with Prime Minister Donald Tusk even borrowing a line from US President Donald Trump to open business. Konrad Golinski has more.
In a nod to the slogan from U.S. President Donald Trump's last presidential campaign, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk posted the following on X on Friday.
Drill, baby, drill.
But unlike Trump, he'll not be drilling for fossil fuels, but for an ingredient key to the global green revolution, copper. The Polish Prime Minister himself was on location on Friday to inaugurate the massive expansion of Poland's largest copper mine in Rudna, in the lower Silesia region of southeastern Poland.
Copper is becoming a key resource economically and geopolitically. Every investment in this sector strengthens Poland's energy and economic security.
Now, the metal is used in almost all things electric, from electric vehicles, solar infrastructure, and something Poland's bet a lot of money on, wind turbines. KGHM, the company behind the mine, is betting that demand will continue to rise along with the green energy boom.
Copper is the foundation of the energy transition. Without it, a modern economy simply cannot function.
Polish state-owned mining firm KGHM is making record profits, posting earnings of almost 1.6 billion euros in the first 3 quarters of this year, up 16% over 2024. It's already Europe's largest copper producer and ranks second in the world in silver output.
Ladies and gentlemen, around 1.5 kilometers under our feet are enormous deposits of copper. Here in Poland and in this region, we have some of the largest deposits in the world, and surely the largest in Europe.
To get it, however, they're gonna have to dig deep. The expansion of the mine will require 3 new shafts, the deepest of which will be the one in Redków. At 1,360 meters, it'll be the deepest Poland has ever built. To give you an idea of how deep that is, that's like stacking more than 4 Eiffel Towers below the ground. The price tag, roughly 700 million euros. Construction will take about 15 years, and most of the work is to be carried out by Polish engineering and mining firms, a local content model the government says will create thousands of jobs across the region. Now, to help KGHM finance the expansion, the government is preparing changes to Poland's tax regulations on copper, long criticized as a drag on investment.
KGHM must develop. That's why we have decided to make this tax less of a burden on the company.
Of course, criticism abounds, with some saying that the Polish government has missed the boat on this one. Demand for copper has stabilized in recent months as demand for electric vehicles wanes and the green revolution is losing the wind in its sails from the Atlantic to the Pacific. A recent article in The Economist, for instance, has noticed this dip in demand, but it doesn't rule out another boom once economic outlook improves.
Some would say it's too late, but I would argue better late than never.
No matter what happens, KGHM says the expansion will secure high domestic production and reduce the country's reliance on foreign imports. For TVP World, I'm Konrad Gorlinski.
Polish diplomacy has been on full display in Warsaw this weekend, with the country's Foreign Affairs Ministry opening its doors to visitors. As Piotr Mischuk reports, the event marks the 17th edition of Poland's Foreign Service Day and gives onlookers a sneak peek behind the curtain.
reading the original text of Poland's NATO treaty accession, or following a protocol when a foreign delegation is visiting. These are attractions available for visitors at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the day of Poland's Foreign Service, an event that aims to celebrate Poles working towards building bridges between nations.
Diplomacy is Poland's first line of defense, and skilled, courageous and effective diplomats are sometimes at least as important for the state as armed armies.
Some 5,000 people are working for the ministry both inside the country and outside the country in one of 160 Polish offices abroad. Those are embassies, consulate, Polish institutes and permanent missions. Those people are working for the interest of Poland, for the benefit of Poland, and according to Deputy Foreign Minister Marcin Bosacki, they have some success in recent years.
I would say there are three. One is, of course, joining NATO. The second one is joining and increasingly building strong leadership position within European Union. And the third one is building a unified bloc with only one exception, which is unfortunately Hungary, after the unprovoked Russian aggression against Ukraine in 2022.
In a rapidly changing world and at a time of great political upheaval, diplomacy remains one of the key tools for a country like Poland. For TVP World, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Warsaw, I'm Piotr Miszczuk.
A new cultural centre or an old chocolate factory? Archaeologists in Warsaw have made a surprising discovery, uncovering the remains of an old plot formerly home to the sweet treat. It stood there until World War II. But after 80 years under dust and soil, some treasures remain. Gabriela Jelonek reports.
Building new cultural center in Warsaw brought unexpected discovery. Right behind me you can see Nożyki synagogue, and on the other side of the street we had one of the biggest chocolate factories called Venus. It didn't last the Second World War, but right now we found some treasures that lasted 80 years under the soil, mud and dust.
It was quite extraordinary excavation because we found the floor, tiles, but also some chocolate molds that were used to produce chocolate. Also some labels, paper labels, so everything what they needed to produce chocolate. Some relics, some small artifacts that we found will be placed into the museum.
The factory was established in early 20th century, but the family of Shapiro who found the factory left Warsaw just before the Second World War in 1930. And afterwards, they started a new factory that runs in Tel Aviv till now. According to the grandson of the founders of Venus factory, when his grandparents fled Poland, they took a lot of sweets with them to bribe the Nazi Germans.
We are in contact with him and we're trying to arrange a meeting soon, but I won't say more because it will be a next message.
Pre-war Warsawians loved chocolate, and we had 5 to 7 big chocolate factories, and we were one of the biggest producers of chocolate. But it happens still now, because right now in the European Union, Poland is the third largest producer and exporter of chocolate. But there is also an idea to bring back to life Warsaw chocolate in special shape.
Using the molds forms excavated at that site.
As you can see, Warsaw, city that raised from ashes, still has some undiscovered secrets. For TVP World, Gabriela Jelonek.
And that's all for this shorter edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. Do stay with us for more news, interviews and analysis. I'm Aaron Darman. Good night.